respect Sam Quinn's work. We've been following him for a long time here, Shasky. Warriors and Jazz probably have path to Markkanen trade, but what is the middle ground? So we're going to ask Sam Quinn right here on the River Islands guest line. As Sam Quinn joins us on the River Islands guest line, all guests on 95.7 The Game appear on the River Islands guest lines. Isn't it time for you to discover the islands, River Islands in Lathrop? Sam, what's happening, man? Good afternoon.
Guys, great to be here. It's kind of a weird time in the off season, right? Like all of the action from early July is kind of over, and we're sort of just waiting out the like staring contest here between the Jazz and the Warriors. And like there are a couple other possible trades going on, but like this is the dull time where it could happen at any time, but it also might just not happen at all.
Are you in Las Vegas right now in Summer League? Are you walking around listening to agents and GMs or whatnot?
I cannot stand July in Vegas. It's too much. It's too hot. I'm not in Vegas.
Nah, that's real.
Can we ask him the most important? We're going to get to the NBA portion.
Oh, the most
You know that your name almost closely resembles a local rapper who's one of the most famous of all time. Your name is Sam Quinn.
Yeah.
The rapper's name is Sam Quinn.
The mighty Sam Quinn, but we're calling you the mighty Sam Quinn.
Have you ever heard of him?
I've never heard. Is this a Bay Area guy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
San
straight from San Francisco. Yeah.
Filmo?
The mighty
Okay.
Sam Quinn.
I'm flattered. You know what? If this whole basketball thing doesn't work out, it's nice to know that I have some backup options.
There you go. Well, I think it's worked out well for you. And your article is very intriguing here, Sam, as you write for
He's hitting
CBS
like
Sports.
Barry, scoring like Jerry.
Yeah, there it is.
Still right here, Sam Quinn the Mary.
Now, you think that Markkanen seems attainable for the Golden State Warriors, even at a big cost here. So what is the middle ground to making this trade? Let me ask you this. Should the Warriors make this trade? And because I'm not as high on Markkanen as a lot of other people are, Sam.
I'll put it to you this way. A year ago, the Mavericks were a lottery team, and you look at the guys they added, it was P.J. Washington, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. Like, these are good players. They didn't add another superstar, and they made it to the finals. I think what that tells you is that competing in the West is so much about matchups that if you get Markkanen and you think he makes sense against, this team, that team, whoever, I don't think the Warriors, just by virtue of being a 10 seed last year, are that far away, right? Like, I think if you get Markkanen, you can plausibly talk yourself into like, okay, we could be the 4 seed, we could be the 5 seed, we could be the 3 seed. Like, we could be a firm playoff team with 2 offensive stars and a lot of defensive pieces in the role player slots. That might not guarantee us a championship. I know the standard for the Warriors is relatively high because when they signed Kevin Durant, it was like automatic championship. For most teams, it doesn't really work that way. When you make a star trade, you're doing it because you think it gives you a chance. I think with Stephen Curry and Lauri Markkanen and the sort of supporting cast they would have, you'd have a chance. Is it 30%? Is it 10%? Is it 2%? It's somewhere in the middle. Like, I think you'd probably put yourself firmly in that group of like maybe not as good as Oklahoma City, but you're maybe down like, Denver, Minnesota, the teams like that. You'd have a chance. Is a chance good enough for you? If it is, you make the trade. If you think you need to save these assets to either rebuild post-Steph, or if your standard is higher and you think we're only going to give up all this stuff if we can get a Durant-level guy who like gives us the guarantee that we had in 2017, then you don't.
So I'm reading the article. It's a really well-written article on CBS.com. So what's the middle ground here? Because you're saying that the Jazz are asking for too much. The Warriors aren't giving up enough. What's the middle ground in your estimation?
Yeah, so the reporting right now has been that there are a bunch of picks on the table. That's pretty obvious. Like, if any version of this trade happens, Golden State's going to be giving control of its first-round picks to the Jazz for most of the next 7 years, you would presume. The Jazz are reportedly also asking for Brandon Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga. The Warriors aren't offering those guys at this time. Now, what I'll point out here is that there's kind of a soft deadline of August 6th. That's when Lauri Markkanen becomes eligible to renegotiate and extend his contract. If he's going to do it, it makes the most sense for both him and the Jazz to do it on August 6th exactly, because if he does so, he's not eligible to be traded for the next 6 months. 6 months after August 6th is February 6th, which is the exact date of the trade deadline. So I would say we're looking at around another 2-3 week window where trade negotiations are happening. It doesn't really make sense for either Utah or Golden State to make their best offer right now, since they both know this August 6th deadline is sort of looming. So it makes sense that you'd kind of lowball, right? That being said, I think the Jazz probably understand that they're not getting both of those young guys. And I think the Warriors probably understand that they're not getting Markkanen without giving up at least one of them. So then the question becomes, which one makes more sense to trade? Again, this becomes a matter of perspective. I think Jonathan Kuminga is the higher upside of the two young players. I think there is a version of his career that sees him become a multiple-time All-Star. He has the athletic tools. Like, he really did break out last year, and I think with more shots available on this year's team, like, there is a chance that he could grow into like a very, very special player. I don't think that's going to happen for Brandon Podziemski. I think he's going to be a good starter. I feel that's a pretty reliable prediction there. I don't think he has the tools to become like, you just lost Klay Thompson. I don't think Pods is going to be the next Klay, but I think he's a good player. The real reason Podziemski seems to be at the center of all of this is that he has 3 years left on his rookie deal and Kuminga only has one. If the Jazz trade for Kuminga, they're paying him right away. If they trade for Podziemski, they've got several more years of him being cheap. On the other side, if the Warriors trade for Markkanen, they're going to have to max him out. So they probably would prefer not to max out Markkanen and pay Kuminga when you already have Curry and Draymond and Wiggins on the books. They just got out of this luxury tax hell. They don't really want to dive right back in, I would assume anyway, and say, oh, we're going to set ourselves up to pay the second apron in 26. So right now, I think there's probably a version of this trade that's feasible for both sides where there's one of those two young guys. I think right now, and I think Shams Charania has reported this as well, that Podziemski is sort of the one that the Jazz are more focused on. Do I think they would blink on Kuminga if it ultimately came to that? I think they probably would, but that's not reporting. That's more just, if you're the Jazz, the reason you're doing this is because you don't think you have star upside, at least beyond Markkanen, right? Like, you're doing it because you want to tank, you want to get rid of Markkanen, be one of the worst teams in the NBA, get a bunch of assets, then also pick at the top of next year's draft. You can do that with Kuminga. The best version of Kuminga is several years away. You get him, you bring him in the building, you develop him now, give him a bunch of shots. Maybe in a few years, you're looking at a scenario where you have Kuminga as the best version of himself as a star, but then you also have all these other draft assets. You have guys you picked, you have picks from other teams. You really set up nicely. I think, and I'm stating that I think, and I'm not reporting, that if it came down to Kuminga and a lot of picks, the Jazz probably do it. With the Warriors, I'm less certain.
You think the Warriors are higher on Pods or Kuminga? Because yesterday, I don't know if you were watching, Sam, and we have Sam Quinn on CBS Sports, wrote a great article on CBSSports.com trying to break down this trade or potential trade between the Jazz and the Warriors. Joe Lacob, here, I'll just play the sound for you, Sam, and you can react to it. Here's Joe Lacob last night at Summer League on his feelings about Brandon Podziemski.
He was a revelation, to be quite honest. I mean, he was one of the, all-rookie team, top 5 in the league. He started a whole bunch of games for us. Steve had troubles getting him off the floor. I mean, he had to have him on the floor. He was so good. He does so many things well. He's ultra-confident. He's got an NBA body. He can get wherever he wants. He obviously can shoot threes. He can drive. He can pass. I mean, what can he do? We're really excited. We think we've got a future all-star.
Are we overrating Podziemski in this market, or are we underrating Jonathan Kuminga?
Yeah, I think future All-Star is a little much, right? Especially when you're talking about a guy who's an older rookie who you'd probably prefer would be taking more threes. Oh, like, he's a very good shooter. He's a little too hesitant from deep. Like, I don't know that he has the athletic tools to be like true All-Star kind of guy, but he was already a very good player as a rookie. Like, I think he's going to settle into being a very good starter and be like the sort of role player that contenders need. I'm not trying to undersell him. It's just like Jonathan Kuminga physically can do things that he can't. Now, Jonathan Kuminga can't shoot like him, and Jonathan Kuminga doesn't have a lot of the role player skills that Podziemski has, but it kind of comes down to what you're prioritizing, right? If you're thinking we need somebody who could potentially like be an all-star 5 years from now when Steph is either retired or really, really at the end, Kuminga makes more sense. If you're thinking all that matters is winning right now while we have Steph, I think Podziemski probably helps the 2025 Warriors more than Kuminga does. So, look, there are arguments for both. I think given where they are, if they're willing to go into the second apron, I might take the swing on just like, we're going to pay Kuminga and we're going to be ultra talented and we'll figure it out. Kuminga would be such a great fit, too, on a team with Steph and with Lauri, right? Like, imagine Draymond throwing him lobs out of the short roll with all that shooting around him. Like, that seems like it would be a pretty great fit. But Podziemski, just given the contract and given the stability of knowing what you're getting, I see what the Warriors see. I'm not as high on him, but I understand why they are.
How do you see this ending?
Right now, look, it's boring, but the inertia answer is usually the right one in the NBA. If I had to guess, I think on August 6th, the Jazz will renegotiate and extend Lauri Markkanen. They'll get him up to a much higher salary, and they'll lock him in long term. And then either at the trade deadline in February or next offseason, they'll revisit the Markkanen trade, knowing that they have all these years of team control, and they can offer him to a much wider variety of teams, right? Like, the danger of trading for Markkanen, if you're most teams, is you don't know if he wants to be there. You can feel pretty safe that he'd want to be in Golden State because, look, I've never met a player who doesn't want to play with Steph and Curry. So I feel pretty comfortable saying he'd want to be a Warrior. But if the Jazz want to open this up to other teams, it makes sense to re-sign him first and try this again in 6 months or in a year. That said, if he does renegotiate and extend, I don't want to say that knocks the Warriors out entirely. It just makes it significantly harder because the Warriors don't have that much matching salary, right? Like, unless they want to start talking about trading Wiggins or trading Draymond, which I don't think would be their plan at this time. Lauri Markkanen only has an $18 million cap figure. That's preposterously low for an all-star caliber player. The Jazz can sort of hold on and say, we don't like this offer, we can wait. The Warriors can't just say, we can't trade for Lauri Markkanen. We're going to trade for one of the 10 other all-stars making $18 million because those players just don't exist.
Right.
And even if they did, they wouldn't be available. So I think the Jazz have a little bit more leverage here. And Danny Ainge has this reputation of he's only going to make a trade if he thinks it's an A+, right? Like, he's not going to make a trade that he thinks is fair. He's going to make a trade that he thinks he's won significantly. So I don't think the Warriors are going to give up both of those guys. I think we might get to a point where they'd offer one of them. I don't quite know if that's enough. So it's close to 50-50. I think there's a reasonable chance that this happens. Inertia is typically the strongest force in professional sports. It's easier to predict that something won't happen than it will. So I guess I would slightly lean towards it not happening, but it's on the table. It's possible.
So let's say this, Sam, before we get you out of here, and we really appreciate the time today. Sam Quinn, CBS Sports.com here on the River Islands guest line. Let's say if the Warriors don't get this deal done, how do you view this roster moving to the next season? With the Kuminga, with the Podziemski, with the Moses Moody, and all the additions they made with Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, and DeAnthony Melton?
I think it's a deceptively good regular season team, right? Like, they're very deep. They have a lot of good NBA players. That being said, just given the talent here, if Steph sprains an ankle and misses 25 games, that's it. It's kind of that simple. The West is so deep that if you don't have your one star and you don't have a secondary star to carry the load without him, there's just kind of not much you can do. You go 7-18 in that stretch, and poof, where you were once a 5 seed, you're now an 11. If they stay healthy, I think certainly play in, if not, maybe a playoff team. It's just so hard when you get to the playoff stage to say we have one high level shot creator, which is Steph, and then after that, we're really relying on the system and a lot of role player guys. I don't think that's going to fly. Even in 2022, Clay wasn't Clay, but Clay was still a very good offensive player. And Jordan Poole, it's gone off the rails since then. But Jordan Poole at that point was at least a pretty good secondary shot creator.
Yeah.
Andrew Wiggins was better than he's been over the last years. I hope he bounces back. Obviously, the personal issues, hopefully he can at least, live with that. So, look, I think without another star, the championship conversation is off the table, right? They're just not talented enough in their current iteration to challenge the best teams in the West. If they're okay with being a play-in team that has some optionality and just because there isn't a guy now, maybe some other player becomes available in a few months.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say if they're really all in on we need to win with Steph while we can, you make the trade and you deal with the consequences later.
Sam Quinn, everybody, here on 95.7 The Game with Butcher and Bonte. Sam, thanks so much for the time, man. Really good article, really good insight. I think Warrior fans are not mixed. I think a lot of Warrior fans are now saying we don't really want Markkanen for that price point. So thanks for breaking down what you wrote on CBS Sports yesterday.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks for having me. We're going to be doing this for weeks. We've got a lot of marketing rumors ahead. This is gonna
here's your homework.
Down.
Here's your homework. Look up Sam Quinn, the rapper. So the next time we talk, you at least have an idea.
Are you a big hip hop fan?
I'm not a huge music person in general. I will make an exception for somebody who basically shares my name.
Listen,
next time I'm on, I'll have some thoughts.
Fonte's a Swiftie.
Well, I am a Swiftie now. I am a Swiftie. Shake It Off is a hit right now. My 3-year-old daughter is killing me with it.
10 years ago.
Well, I didn't know. It's a hit to me right now. Listen, Sam Quinn. Listen, if you start listening to Sam Quinn, your street cred will go up because it's a little street. I don't know if this is your type of vibe, but you could go into the hood or whatnot. And all the people on Twitter, shock the party. There it is.
Sounds like a plan. Thank
you.
He
has no idea what we're talking about.
No, I know. He's going to do some homework, though. I believe him. Sam Quinn on the River Islands guest
Listen to the story I'm about to tell.
Oh, man. Oh, my gosh.
Everyone thinks that that's a Nicotina song, and it is a Nicotina song, essentially. Yeah. That's a Sam Quinn song.
It is a Quinn song.
Although, hey, yo,